Hey, I didn't know that Bubba's been visiting the Spirit Halloween store. Here's your spooky spot on the Spirit Halloween, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface Statue Special Halloween Edition. When you hear that chainsaw revving, you know it's game over. Make it clear you're the ultimate Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan when you get this officially licensed Leatherface statue. Show off your love for horror movies and give your guests a scare. Every Halloween, I'm sure the Sawyers win Best Decorated House. Those bodies look so lifelike. Before we get a closer look, though, at the Spirit Halloween Leatherface Halloween Edition statue, I'm going to go ahead and grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. Now, this statue is made, though, of poly resin, and it is a bit expensive, I will say. Getting this over at Spirit Halloween, and at one point they had this stocked in stores. I ended up having to order this one online, and the price was, at the time, $89.99. So I would certainly say it's a little bit more of a steeper price. Thank goodness it does actually have audio and sound effects, which we will cycle through in a second. Let's slow grab again, like the tape measure as promised. And right to the very top of Bubba's head, you're looking at the statue of Leatherface being 12 inches exactly, or it's going to be 30 centimeters tall. Now, with it having sound effects, the statue actually does have a little try me button on the front of the box, which I will admit I probably pressed a good several times in the store. Again, I had planned to come back and get it at the store, but they had sold out, so I ended up having to order this one online. It does, though, require 3 AAA batteries. Now, the batteries are, in theory, technically installed on the bottom of the base. What are you talking about, humbled reviewer? If you pick up the statue, well, I will say right away it's quite heavy. If you look at the bottom of the base, you got yourself, first of all, a battery cover. Now, the batteries were installed on the bottom of this, but the batteries were dead. They were pretty cheap batteries anyways, like one of those red no-name labeled batteries. I ended up having to replace them with at least AAA batteries that I knew were brand new in my own stock. Replace those. First of all, you have to unscrew the little battery cover. I don't know why they always have to put those in there now. I think it's probably more for safety precautions than anything else. Not that a kid, I'm thinking, is going to be going up close to a Leatherface statue and then popping the batteries in their mouth. I don't even know why they would be doing that. But the little cord that would attach to the try me button is located right there. So you want to make sure you just untap that. Or what you can also do too is always keep that in place and just cycle through the button doing it that way instead of the button on the top of the display stand. Then, of course, down onto the bottom, you've got yourself on, off, and try me. When it was switched over to try is when then it had the little button activation on the outside of the box. You want to make sure, of course, you're switching it over to on. On the bottom of this also as well, it says 1974 Vortex Inc. Kim, Henkel, and Toby Hooper, all rights reserved. So it is officially licensed, but you also have 4 rubberized feet on the bottom of this, so of course you're not going to prevent any scratching on surfaces when you are sliding the statue around. I'm hoping to think you're not going to be sliding this much around. On the front of this, first of all, you got a very decorative looking display base, some chains, some skulls, quite large skulls too, but if you consider really the size of Leatherface perched on top, I guess the skulls are fairly accurate in size. It looks to be also as well, you've got some really interesting old floorboarding here on the top of it. There's also the little Texas Chainsaw Massacre placard. It does say, of course, Texas and Chainsaw in white, Massacre with the cut through it, all nicely painted here in red. And there's a little activation button there on the top. I'm going to press it in a second. Just give me a few moments. Now, the thing about this is being that it is a Halloween-themed version of Leatherface. Now, that would almost even indicate the fact that this Leatherface statue was released before but wasn't Halloween-themed. I don't ever recall ever seeing this statue, but this one's clearly been listed, at least on their site and also on the box, as being Halloween-themed. You can see it by the way that Leatherface is stomping down on a few randomly placed jack-o'-lanterns. I really like the way that they've sculpted these. You have, it seemed to be, a total of 4. One off to the side here, closer to what almost looks to be like a decaying, melting away corpse. But then also as well, you've got a couple of, you got 3 here on the side of various sizes. The one in the front, though, unfortunately, is the one that has to get squished by Leatherface's boot. And they have it looks like they've actually painted all of this initially, or molded it possibly also in all black. Black, of course, being the same color on the bottom of the base, and then they probably would have just gone and painted the surfaces over top. Some of the areas around his boots isn't the cleanest, simply just because, again, like they're trying to paint around the boot and they're also trying to paint around the jack-o'-lanterns, but at least the jack-o'-lanterns are a nice, bright, very vibrant orange. You've got a few little areas of splattered blood. scattered all across this. Some new, again, random chains just sort of draped all across this, and some very random bones all sort of sticking out from the ground. On the side, you can see there looks to be a rib cage. There looks to be also as well an arm and a hand, what's left of the corpse as well. And again, you got all these nice little detailed, little intricate bones all sculpted around the base. I still don't know what's going on here necessarily with this skeleton. It looks like the skeleton is basically just molting into the ground. Probably they just would have had to do it this way so the skeleton wasn't raised and wasn't in potential risk of this breaking. But it sort of looks like it's bleeding itself, melting its way then onto the floor underneath. It's about the only thing I really don't... Well, it's two things I don't really like about the statue is the way they've actually handled the skeleton. I don't know, again, why it looks specifically like this. Again, it almost looks like it was made out of sand, like someone's making a skeleton sandcastle. Anyways, though, moving up from that, of course, moving as we pan up to the top of the statue, we've got Leatherface here. Looks like drawing back the cord to start his chainsaw. Judging by the fact that there's blood here on the end of the chainsaw means that the chainsaw's already been busy. And yet there's no blood anywhere on the teeth of the chainsaw, only on the front, so he probably has been slashing his way with it. The chainsaw is fairly well sculpted. The yellow, of course, has been added to it. I think the chainsaw in the movie is actually more of a closer green, but the way it's shot, it looks more like it's yellow in the movie. The draw cord is about the only thing is actually metal. Like all the rest of it seems to be all composed of polyresin, but it looks like the draw cord is actually, as you can see, it actually is made of metal. Stop that. And then, of course, from that, the chainsaw, just behind the chainsaw, is a very bloodied apron. The apron isn't quite the coloring of the way it would have been in the 74 movie, but I guess it gets the job done. You can see as well, like, again, it's quite generously splattered with a good dollop of blood. And then from there, you can also, you can also see as well, he does have the little bracelet around one of his arms, so at least there's some accuracy added there as well. The thing I'm not as crazy about, honestly, is the head sculpt. Getting a closer look at Leatherface's face, you get still the option to see his head and his, well, at least his eyes and his mouth underneath, like he would have been the case in the 74 movie as well. I'm going to spin this to the side so you guys can see it as well. It's an okay head sculpt. I think it kind of under-delivers a little bit in the paint. I have to ask myself if this has only been painted just a little bit better. Maybe the mask would have looked a lot better than what it does right now. It has, I don't want to say a cheapness to it. I guess I had already said that. It does have a little bit of a cheap look to it. I just wish it was a little bit painted better than what it is right now. Maybe just a little bit of an extra wash. It sort of seems like it just ran across the plant, across the conveyor belt, and people are just going to go like this. I'm going to add a little bit of paint onto Leatherface's face, move it along, and then the next one comes along and just sort of... It doesn't seem like there's a real rhyme or reason. I guess there probably could have been an opportunity where they could have made it look a little more detailed, considering the asking price for this and all is $89.99, and that's tax on top of it as well. Also, the shirt is something that's really devoid of a lot of paint. There really could have been a lot of an opportunity to add some stains, just some sweat marks, not to mention just the darker, accurate, more coloring of the shirt that he has in the movie. It's very white here, unfortunately, and it really could have used a lot more color than what it actually gets afforded. It gets some stripes there on the sides of his sleeves, and you can kind of see under the light a little bit that he also has the stripes on the shirt as well, but nothing really seems painted on it. His arms, though, while being painted in a skin tone, really does seem like there's a lot of missed opportunities to add a lot of additional weathering to this. Now, the statue itself does have a cycle through series of sound effects. Again, all activated by the fact you press a little button here on the front. You want me to show you the button again? Okay, I'll pick up that. I'll show you guys. The button is right on the top there. Again, the first time I did this, I pressed it several times and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. I mean, the Try Me cord was already removed, but I knew there was batteries built inside of it. Knock, knock, who's there? So I ended up having to change the batteries, and then sure enough, once the batteries were changed, it does then cycle through the sound effects. I will say the sound effects are very quite clear and loud, so it does, I feel even though for $89.99, if it was just the statue of Leatherface alone, I feel like it wouldn't really, I don't think it would really be delivering the asking price of being that much. But the fact it does have audio clips, I think kind of bumps up the value of this a little bit more than just simply being a polyresin statue of Leatherface. The one thing I also really like about this, I know everybody keeps saying, just press the button already, blast it. Just before we actually press the button, one thing I did also want to say as well, it is a very long audio clip. It actually cycles through the revving of the chainsaw, the screaming, and all the stuff that goes along with it. At any given point, you can press this button again. So if you are somebody like, for example, somebody comes into your house and you've already listened to this a good 100 times or so, and somebody decides, like a kid, for example, wants to go up and press it, you don't have to worry that you have to then sit through. Just stop your conversation with the rest of the adults and wait for Leatherface to finish killing his victims. You can easily just go up to the button and press it again to turn it off. As you'll see right now, we're going to go ahead and press the button here on Leatherface. And again, you'll kind of get a good feeling just how good the sound actually is on the statue. Well, I feel like the statue sort of under-delivers a little bit on the paint. I think it makes up for it, at least on the sound effects. Let's go ahead and press that right now. Oh, one thing we actually have to do first is I want to make sure I switch it over to on. Oh, it is actually on. Let's try that again. Strange. It was working before. I don't think I have to change the batteries again. I literally just put the batteries in and I pressed it. There we go. I guess it was just a hair-sensitive switch. Now again, at any given point, you can stop that by pressing the button again. I don't really know. This is now the third time this has happened, where switching it off and switching it on seemed to get it to work, and prior to that, it wasn't working at all. I changed the batteries. Again, these are completely brand new batteries. So again, it might be just a problem where maybe the switch is a little finicky. So if you are getting this statue for yourself and you're realizing, okay, why is this not working? Sort of just play a little bit with the batteries, play a little bit with the switch, and you might just find the switch is, again, just really super sensitive. Anyways, we're going to press it again. I'm going to run it through completely all the way through so you guys can actually get the full effect of what the audio clips do sound like. The clarity on it is really quite good, and I was really impressed that that sound was as good as it was. I'm just going to pick this actually up so you guys can get maybe a... Now, the thing about it, though... I'm just going to switch this off for a second. The thing about it, though, is it doesn't seem to have any visible speaker section either. So it seems to almost be a case that the speaker is projecting in the same spot as the battery compartment. Isn't that a bit strange? Again, you would have expected that there would have been a very visible slotted section where all the audio would be coming out of, but it doesn't seem to be the case at all. Pressing it again, it seems like it's coming from the same area as the battery compartment. Now, it actually does also as well go through this, I think, twice before it eventually does stop. So again, you can also just run the course of it and just know sooner or later it will eventually turn off. This isn't going to be one of those things where Leatherface is going to be chasing and killing people with his chainsaw throughout the entire day. Eventually it does, though, shut off. Maybe it does also do it a third time. I'm going to run this out and see how long it actually takes for the statue to switch off. I had counted before. I thought it was only the 2 times. Maybe it's actually, in fact, 3 times that it finally does shut off. As we all wait very patiently here. Well, maybe even switches. It does eventually turn off because I know I had it in my kitchen and it was going in the background until eventually it shut off. Unless... Oh, that's probably the case as well. I had it at one point switch obviously over to try. So maybe with try, it only again does it once or twice before it eventually shuts off. If you have it maybe on, maybe it will still continue to go. Obviously, for the sake of dragging this review out, I wouldn't want you guys to be sitting here for the next 10-15 minutes hearing this thing screaming. Let's just switch this off. So maybe it is a case when it actually comes to being the on setting of the statue, it will just continue to run. Which is one thing, of course, now luckily knowing that the battery button is on the top here, you can honestly just switch it on and off. Instead of having to lift the statue on the bottom of the base and then switching it off that way, you would just have to always know to turn the button on the top of it. Again, I probably should really test this to see how long this thing actually runs. Maybe it is again a case that having it switched over to try, it only again cycled through it once, maybe even twice, before eventually shut off. Because of course, in a store, you wouldn't want this thing to always be cycling through the sounds. Maybe then now in the on mode, the statue will just continue to rev, continue to cut its way, and Leatherface will just be continuing to pursue his prey. The statue as a whole is good. I mean, for again, $89.99, if it was just devoid altogether of its audio clips, I don't know necessarily I would say $89.99 is a good asking price. And that's $89.99, by the way, in Canada. So it's $90 plus on top of that, the tax that goes along with it. Or, of course, if you also order this online, the shipping that would also go along with it as well. It's a pretty steep asking price, I feel, for what you're getting here. The statue as a whole looks okay. I mean, if it wasn't for the audio, I would say the statue for me is only honestly worth about $50 to $60. Maybe about meeting in the middle. Let's say $55, $54, $54.99 I think would be a sweet ideal price point for a statue like this if it didn't have audio clips. The fact that it does, though, have audio clips, I think may justify why it's asking the price that it is. $90 is a little high if it didn't have audio, but I think with $90, the fact that the clarity of the sound is as good as it is. I mean, this sounds like somebody's actually being butchered with a chainsaw in the same room as me. I think the audio is actually good enough to justify the price that they're asking for it. Whether, again, it's worth you going to a local store for yourself and picking this statue up for yourself or ordering it online, I guess it really would determine how big of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan you actually are. While I do think that Leatherface's sculpt and the display base are one of the things I also really like about the statue, again, it's the paint that kind of under-delivers on this piece. He doesn't look as good, I think, in this shirt. He certainly doesn't look as good in the mask. And I think anyone that has the chance to pick this one up for themselves, to have a little more talented skills when it comes to painting, could easily then go in this and add the extra necessary details that would really up the price and up the value of what the statue would have been. As it is right now, the statue does come across a little on the cheap looking side. I mean, I get the intended plan of having an included audio clip, and that's the thing that also, again, really for me, sells the idea that the statue is worth the $89.99. If not for that, I think the price of the statue would have been way too high. If, let's just say, it was Staction, it literally was doing the same thing it's doing right now, just on your shelf. If it didn't have any of the audio clip, I would have certainly said $89.99 is a too high of a asking price, and I may have even possibly passed on it altogether. I'm sure I'd love to pick up things and review them for the Halloween season, but for $90 for just a Leatherface that's doing, well, he's doing it right now, I don't know if I think that would be a little bit too high for the asking price. But the fact it does have audio clips, and only just short of maybe someone going and touching up the details on this face, I think there's a real opportunity to make this statue look a lot better than what it is right now. It sort of has a mass-produced look and vibe to it. And yet, the audio clips are some of the best I've listened to when it comes to anything that has audio to statues. Statues with audio don't always work because they tend to have more of a muffled sound to it. And yet there was nothing muffled at all about the screaming. Now, whether that's actually a clip pulled from the '74 film or if they just recreated that essentially in a studio, either way, like, the clarity of the audio is one of the most impressive things about the statue. Well, it sort of under-delivers a little bit on the paint. It makes up for it at least on a sculpt, and the display base is interesting enough as well, even though the skeleton sort of does look like it's melting into the floor. What do you guys think of the statue? Let me know down below in the comment section. Could you guys see yourselves picking up the Halloween edition Leatherface statue, which is, again, a Spirit Halloween exclusive? I did actually find this one not necessarily in the stores. I did find it at one point, but had gone back since, and it was sadly sold out. I had asked if they had planned to stock anything more, and they said, the girl that was working at the counter, nice enough person, but she said, I didn't know. And that was more than enough for me to kind of say, well, you know what? I can't just bank on I don't know. I'm going to bank on the idea at least of ordering this one online. So already asking $89.99. Then had to ask me as well the additional cost of the tax and the shipping on top of it. So I think when it was all said and done, this guy was a little bit more than $100. Whether it was worth the $100, at least it does have really good audio. Let's say for that. But what do you guys think of the statue? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you had the chance to get this one for yourself? Or if there's something that you could see yourselves picking up for yourself. Also, as well, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing during the month of Spottober, and would certainly like to come back for more, oh, rest assured, there will be more. Make sure, of course, you hit that subscribe button down below. Yes. Make sure to turn on the bell notification. Sure. Make sure you're coming back on a regular basis because, of course, well, we are wrapping up things right now for Leatherface. There's going to be a lot more ghoulish, spooky videos coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.